spending aspect. You wear both hats as a CIO and CISO. So let me ask you, where are your priorities right now? So if you get those dollars increase in your budget, where's your first priority to look to spend them?
It's a difficult one because those two roles naturally, historically, in enterprise conflict with each other. And I try my best to straddle both depending on the needs of the business and what I'm seeing in terms of activity. So, beginning the transformation program, what we had to take was what were small independent businesses and push them together. At that point, I had a decision to make around how do we, it's basically a greenfield implementation. So, how do you want that to go and how will it scale for the future? For us, it was a no-brainer. Go cloud native first and foremost, and embed security right at the bottom of everything we do. So starting off from the ground up. So we had a big moving of the dial when we first implemented a few years ago, and we chose Microsoft as our backbone for that, and heavily utilized the Microsoft 365 EMS E5 license scheme, for which you get a lot of bang for your buck. So what have we seen? We did a big increase in security spend initially. We then focused on building up the rest of the infrastructure and then concentrating on the application stack. And now we're having another dive into security to ramp up again to the next level of maturity. For me, it doesn't ever go away, security. It's just how much we apply it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it will never go away, right? That's just the nature of what we do, and also the ever-evolving changes in business needs and technology itself. Very interesting. So the first thing it sounds like you really did is you decided we had to go cloud first. That's the first step of your transformation. You went out there, you looked at the space. Why did you choose Microsoft over possibly AWS or maybe even a Google Cloud suite? Just if you would mind just giving us your thinking on why Microsoft won. As we look here at more of the individual models, we are seeing you and your peers more and more aligned with Microsoft, whereas earlier in our career, AWS was considered the front runner in cloud, but Microsoft is catching up, if not surpassing. So I would just love to hear your thoughts on why.
Yeah, so these decisions were like 4 years ago. So it was a bit of a gamble. And what I looked at in the market, when I was a technical engineer, I was Microsoft trained, and pretty much 90% of all businesses around the world are using Microsoft in some shape or form, including ours. And then the way we look at that then is, okay, so our internal teams are used to using Microsoft, so that's one less of the change that we would have to embed if we chose a new technology stack. And then also our customers and our consultants and the fractional employees we have, they're used to using it. So that whole change management piece made it a lot easier. That was one big part of the decision-making process. The second one was total cost of ownership. So looking at where Microsoft were looking to spend and drive their service and their revenues for the future, it was all around our services, Office 365 and Azure, certainly were the way they were going. If you looked at what they were doing with Sky for Business, Teams was quite embryonic back then. You could see the vision. So we took a gamble and said, all right, well, let's hope that they pay off on that vision and deliver on it. We put in Teams as soon as it was out there. And actually, we then built our whole backbone Office kind of Teams and SharePoint and the Office 365 stack, and then we leveraged Dynamics 365 on top of that. Really then from an integration perspective, again, back to total cost of ownership, it made it easy for us as a smaller organization with a relatively small technology team to get the most out of the tools without having to know multiple tools across multiple vendors and see the cost of ownership go through the roof. So they were really the main components why we chose Microsoft for backbone.
Yeah, and again, you only touched on some of that ecosystem, right? There's also like the collaboration system with Teams and everything else they do. So yeah, if you're willing to go and pay up for that 365 license, which is a big price tag up front, as you well know, but there's so much that comes along with it. So if you've agreed to go into this Microsoft ecosystem, I guess the question for then us is, where is Microsoft not best of breed? Where did you feel you needed to add in on other aspects, whether it be on your application stack or security? But let's start with applications first. Obviously, part of a digital transformation is not just a cloud infrastructure, but also a application hosting as well. So the SaaS side of the digital transformation is massive as well. A company your size, obviously, you need CRM, you need the ITSM, but maybe Salesforce, ServiceNow might just be a little too big for your company and the size of your growth right now. So I'd be curious, sir, what you ended up choosing for your application stack.
No, I'm interested. We looked at Salesforce, and we worked with them for about 8 months actually to really look to see if that would work for us. What we knew we needed was an enterprise grade system. So it was always going to be a Salesforce of the world or a Dynamics of the world. It was just which one it was going to be. And we looked at both in parallel. We ended up choosing Dynamics 365 for CRM. That was our first one off the bat. For our finance or ERP system, so we went for finance and operations, which is the exact product line. And we also took a brave deep dive into the Dynamics for marketing module as well, moving away from HubSpot at the time. The thought behind that was it is not best of breed, it is embryonic, it is still growing, but the integration and the insights and the data we can funnel directly to our sales team who are using CRM, that would give us our kind of win going forward. And actually, it's been painful to get to that point, but that is now starting to pay off, and Microsoft continue to develop the marketing solution at pace, and we're starting to see more features. So we're now starting to see that gamble pay off. We've been hugely impressed with finance and operations. It's been a great system for our finance team.
Okay, that's really interesting feedback. I appreciate it. You can see here that we captured quite a large growth in our overall spending intentions for Microsoft Dynamics. It had a massive jump. So you might not be alone in adopting and starting to increase your usage of them. It seems to be something that's happening across the board. Another one that we saw, which actually came out of the gate extremely hot and has cooled off a little bit, is Freshworks. I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
I said we have that also. Very interested. We use that as our help list.
Oh, so you use that on the ITSM side. Okay, great, because I know they also have a CRM module in there. And I would love some feedback on that, largely just because it's a name we don't get as many citations for, right? Microsoft Dynamics has hundreds, where Freshworks has 50. So we don't get to hear about it as often. Would you mind maybe just telling us your experience on how Freshworks is doing for you? Is it a sticky application? Is it something that could expand for you?
I think for what we use it for, we use it very maturely. It's really for, we are at the start of building out a ITIL-based service desk and framework. So all that we really use it is for incident and change at the moment in the ITSM world. It certainly has the capability. It's not where we're going to place our dollars into it. It seems like a good tool, but we've taken the Dynamics dive. We've spent a lot of money on integrating and transforming that product and configuring it with some development to make sure it works for our business. And then just quickly to answer your part of your last question as well, what we didn't use within the Microsoft stack, our main kind of core business is our ATS recruitment system, which is a small vendor out of the UK. Because it's right sized for our business, and we built an API with them at the same time. So they had to build their first API, which shows how far behind the curve they were. At the same time, we would integrate that into Dynamics CRM. But that gamble gave us the best of both worlds. We got a fantastic best of breed recruitment system for our market. It does exactly what we need into Dynamics, and we've also integrated into LinkedIn. So that's our ecosystem.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And when you just going back to the ITSM side, when you decided to go to Freshworks, did you look at the much larger ServiceNow, which is considered the market leader in the space, and just choose it wasn't worth the money, or maybe just a little bit too big of a platform for you? How did Freshworks end up winning on your service desk?
It was simple. It was a quick implementation, relatively cheap, and we just needed something to get off the ground very quickly.
Right.
The IT manager at the time took a review. He said, "People want to go with Freshworks." That's what we did.
All right, I appreciate it very much. And then the other aspect of the application stack, which really became more prominent, obviously, when unfortunately the global virus pandemic hit, was the productivity stack. It's something that, you know, we always were aware of, but I think it really rose into prominence with the remote work shift and basically just the entire change in work throughout the last year and a half. It's become extremely prominent. Of course, Microsoft Teams, probably not surprising to you, leading in our productivity app stack for those organizations like yourself that have decided to go with the 365 license. It's a little silly to pay for both Zoom and Slack when you have Teams there. So let's just start there. How has Microsoft Teams been adopted by your enterprise? I know that some of the users would prefer what they would consider a best of breed in Zoom and Slack from a UI UX experience, but usually the executives from a budget side are still trying to push Teams. So I'm just curious how that went with your organization.
Yeah, interesting. So to head that one off straight away, when we made the decision to go with Teams, there was quite a bit of pushback. We have some creativity people in our organization at an executive board level. It's like, why don't you use Slack? That's really cool. Why are we doing it? Well, here's the vision. Here's where it's going. It's the integration. And we frankly don't want to manage multiple platforms. I want to keep our data within one environment, which I know backs off the SharePoint. And we needed a video solution at the time. When I walked in the door, the way we collaborated was fragmented, and it was all over phone, expensive long distance conference bridges. So putting in Teams, we put Teams and video into every meeting room around the world and bought everybody a laptop and moved everybody to Windows 10 at the time and Office 365. That piece of work took us 6 to 9 months. Instantly changed the way we work together globally. That one piece of work connected the business in a way that we've never connected those acquisitions before.